Megan Mckenna, thank you for joining me on GB Talks.
Thanks for having me.
How has your morning been?
Not too bad. Pretty busy.
Busy. I asked you a little while ago if your fiance would be interested in coming on the the podcast because I really wanted to speak to somebody who did tattoos.
Yeah.
And you said you would ask him. Did you bring it up with him?
I did. He's not the most confident person in the world when it comes to talking about himself.
Yeah. Some people really struggle with it.
Yeah. I think he struggles to formulate words sometimes. As I said to you, I think he'd probably need an interpreter.
Yeah.
So.
I think I would struggle on that side.
Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty easy to answer questions about yourself, I think.
Yeah. All right. We'll start with the first one.
Now that I've said that.
Who are the locals listening to?
I think you.
Definitely partially.
Yeah. I don't know. I know a lot of the boys listen to, Joe Rogan and stuff like that. And I don't really listen to anything, so I'm not really one to know too much. I did listen actually a little bit to James Smith. The PT. He's like a British PT from, well, he's in Sydney now. But yeah, I think I just hear everyone talk about Joe Rogan.
Yeah, of course. Do you want to tell the people who you are?
Yeah. So Megan Mckenna, I'm 28 years old, born in Shepparton, lived here all but 2 years of my life. I went down to Geelong and lived there for a couple of years on campus. I'm a criminal defence lawyer. I've worked at Slater and King Lawyers here in Shep for about just over 6 years now. So I'm in court every day and sort of running around like a headless chook. But yeah, that's about it.
You've slowed down on the Instagram posts showing off your new house. Are you still in love with it?
Yeah, I am. I've just been a bit distracted, and I've also run out of things to take photos of. There's only so many times you can see the roof or the windows or the couches or the cats. So I felt like I was spamming everyone a little bit too much.
No, people love it. Did you design it or how did that come?
I did everything. Yeah. I have no imagination whatsoever. So I just said I wanted lots of white and lots of natural light, and he basically put everything together and drew it all and showed it to the builders, and they did it.
Yeah. So you've obviously been in Shepparton your whole life. How do you feel about it?
I love Shep. I think Shep gets a really bad rap. If you had have asked me 10 years ago how I feel about Shep, I would have said I can't wait to leave. And that was sort of the general consensus for everyone at Notre Dame, doing year 12, wanted to get out, go to uni, never come back. And I think a lot of people tried to do that, and probably 80% of them came back. I think at the time though, as an 18-year-old in Shep, you want to go out all the time, or you want to do something, and all we really had was Yahoo, and you can only do that 3 nights a week. So everyone tried to get out and do what they could, but coming back, I think you start to realise Shep's got such a good community spirit, and when you've got your friends and family around you, it makes life a lot easier. So
yeah, do you think people think the town's holding them back?
I think so, yeah. They think there's limited opportunities in Shep, but I think there's as many opportunities as you're willing to sort of grasp yourself, and if you go out and look for them, they're there. It's just that some people don't do that.
Yeah, I got in a huge argument with one of my close friends a long time ago. He said he had to move to Melbourne to be successful as a personal trainer. And I was like, man, the world is in your pocket. You have so much opportunity. You don't need to move to Melbourne. If you want to sell programs online, there's so many ways you can reach people now. You don't need to be in the busiest place with the most things going on.
Yeah. But
you had to move to study.
Well, I probably didn't. So when I first moved to study, I started off doing an arts commerce double degree at Deakin in Geelong, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get out of Shep and go to uni and live on campus and have a good life. And I could have done that online. I could have done a Bachelor of Business here at La Trobe, but it was all about getting out of Shep and doing what I could. So I didn't necessarily have to move.
Yeah.
But yeah, I certainly get people that say, oh, so you're still in Shep, what are you doing there? And it's sort of that, what could you be doing there? Because there's not that much to do there. And it's well, you can do a lot more. If I were to do my job in Melbourne as a I'm 3.5 years into practice, I'd probably still be getting coffees. I barely see the inside of a courtroom, but I've been in court since before I was admitted. So
yeah,
it's, you know, it's just a complete, it depends on your industry. Look, there might be certain things that you can't do here, but I don't know, I think you'd struggle to find something.
Yeah, that would be my anecdotal experience of starting my own gym here, because I wouldn't have made it in Melbourne. Just too much competition.
Yeah,
but
complete oversupply of everything.
Yeah, like I just blew up down here.
Yeah.
It was easy.
Yeah.
That's why I picked here.
And that's why you're not leaving.
Yeah. No, awesome. Do you still have the same group of friends from high school that you had? No? Completely changed?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got my 3 closest girlfriends. One lives in Perth now and 2 are in Melbourne. 2 of them did go to my high school, but they were the year below me. The other one went to a different school, who was one of my best friends all through high school as well. But I suppose, you know, you have your school group of friends, and there's sort of like the girls group and the boys group. And I don't really see a lot of those girls anymore. I see the boys from time to time. But yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. And I think too, like, once you're in a relationship, you become friends with your partner's friends and their girlfriends, and then you sort of form new groups that way. And yeah.
Do you think most of them have stayed in Shep, as far as you know? Your high school friends? Or do they leave and never
probably
come back?
50-50. Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Why didn't you stick with the arts degree?
Because you don't get jobs with arts degrees.
Well, when did that dawn on you?
Well, in arts, I was majoring in criminology. So that was sort of what led into my law degree. But I went and did some work experience with Corrections Victoria, because I sort of looked into what sort of jobs you could get with a crim degree, and that looked like something that was somewhat interesting. And I did work experience there here in Shep, but I was still living in Geelong at the time. I think I only did 2 or 3 weeks there. And the whole time I was there, all that the staff were talking about was their next holiday. And it just didn't sit comfortably with me. Like, I didn't think you should be going to a job where all you're looking forward to is your next break from that job.
Yeah.
And the work was like sort of interesting. I got to sit in while they had, you know, interviews with who they refer to as their offenders or their clients. But it's almost prosecutorial. Like, you're not really assisting those people in any way, shape or form. And I didn't really think that there was any benefit to doing a job like that. So I finished that and then approached who's my current boss about getting a job with him, because he'd just started his own firm. And that sort of led me out of that crim side of things and into the law side of things.
So what's the difference?
So a criminology degree it's an arts degree majoring in criminology, but they do now have specific criminology degrees. It's effectively the same thing. You can't practice law. You'd get a job maybe in like immigration or corrections, as I said, or within youth justice or like the prison system, stuff like that. So you sort of get that background information into criminal behaviour, criminogenic needs and things like that, and a bit more about the psychology and the effects on community and stuff like that. Whereas with a law degree, it's a law degree. So you study all areas of the law. You have to do, there's what's called the Priestley 11. So there's 11 core subjects that every law student has to do across the country. And then there's obviously additional subjects on top of that. So once you do your law degree, you can then apply to be admitted to practice as a lawyer. So you don't just finish and you're a lawyer. You have to apply to be admitted to practice. And in order to do that, you have to do a graduate diploma of legal practice. So it's sort of like you finish your degree, then there's another step, then there's another step, then you're a lawyer. So it's a little bit more complex.
Yeah, well, when you said you were doing an arts degree, I thought you were like painting.
No.
I could not.
I told you, I have no imagination. I am not creative.
Well, that's where I thought you found that out. Like the teacher was like,
yeah, when I was 2.
You need to, you need to change degrees.
No.
So somebody put you on the proper path.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I just started to see things that didn't sit right, and I was like, well, this isn't what I want, so I need to go and figure out what it is that I do.
Yeah. So you went on the path and it was just a slight change in direction.
Yeah.
And then you found the right path.
Yeah.
Cool. How was the study?
It wasn't that, well, it depends who you ask. To me, like looking back now, it doesn't seem like it was that bad because it feels like it was a really long time ago. But I was talking about it with Kai over the weekend and he was like, yeah, you were terrible. Like you were awful to be around. So I was working full-time, studying full-time online. So I was doing sort of 40, 50-hour work weeks and then studying on top of that.
Yeah, wow.
Which was, I wouldn't really recommend. Like I did it because I'd been at uni for long enough and I just wanted to, I started the law degree and I just wanted to get it over and done with as quickly as possible. So I chose a uni based on how quickly I could get through the degree and just smashed out as much as I could as quickly as I could. But I think if you were to start a law degree straight out of high school, like take your time. There's no point in trying to do it the way I did. Because as Kai says, I was awful to be around. But yeah, thinking back now, it doesn't seem that bad, but it was way too much to take on.
Yeah. How old were you when you started the law degree?
23, I think, 22 or 23.
And it was 3 years of full-time study.
So I started in June of 2015 and I was admitted to practice in June of 2018. So it was exactly 3 years from when I started studying to when I became a lawyer.
Yeah.
I finished studying in the January of 2018, so 2.5 years after I started my degree. Finished studying, then started my graduate diploma, did that until March and then was admitted to practice in June.
So when you're admitted to practice, what responsibilities do you have?
Well, that gives you the ability to give legal advice and to practice as a lawyer. So that means different things for different people. Like you might do what I do and do criminal law and advocacy and you're in court every single day. Or you might be, a property lawyer or wills and estates and you sit in an office and you write contracts and I don't know that. I can't even think about that side of things because it just doesn't sound enjoyable at all. But yeah, you're able to give legal advice, but then obviously that carries with it a lot of responsibility and you've got to make sure you're giving appropriate advice and stuff like that. So I was really fortunate because usually being admitted would mean you can start doing court appearances, but because I was already employed at a law firm, I could seek leave of the court, which is ask permission of the magistrate to do appearances prior to my admission. So I'd finished my degree and I was doing my graduate diploma and I was already doing court appearances. So I sort of had a bit of a head start because I was in that position. So that was helpful.
What is the atmosphere like in the courtroom?
Depends on the case.
Elaborate.
Well, I mean, like a typical day might start with a young kid in custody, for example. So you might have like a 15-year-old child in custody for, what doesn't seem like overly serious offending, but they've never been in that situation before. So they're going to be emotional. Their family's going to be emotional. And the children's court and the magistrate's court are two very, very different things. So the magistrate's going to take a really different approach and children's court is designed to be therapeutic. So it's going to be much more gentle. But then you might finish that case and go straight into a plea for someone who is, a 50-year-old Aboriginal man in custody who's been in and out of the justice system his whole life, and the magistrate's run out of patience. So it sort of changes the vibe of the courtroom really dramatically.
Yeah.
And then you could go from that to like a child protection matter where you're fighting to get a child back to their parents' care. So
how does this roller coaster affect you over the day? Or do you just separate yourself from what's going on and just do your job?
You have to. You can't get emotionally attached. If you're finding that you're getting too emotionally attached, it's not. I don't think it's the right job for you.
Do you think that as a person you have a lot of empathy?
Yeah.
It would be so hard then.
Yeah. Yes and no. I think you have to be empathetic to sort of understand the position that these people find themselves in. But if you get too emotionally attached, you risk not being able to do your job to your greatest abilities, really. So you've got to it's a balancing act between your own personal feelings and doing what you're supposed to do.
Is there any rules of the court?
Yeah, definitely. It's a really formal, it's supposed to be really formal. I think in Shepparton we get a little bit lax sometimes because we've got the same magistrates, we've got the same court staff, other lawyers, and it's easy to sort of not forget where you are, but sometimes you might say something and then think, oh, I probably should have said that. Or you might sit at the bar table and you're sort of on your phone a little bit because the magistrate's talking to the prosecutor or something like that, which you really shouldn't do. But the overriding rule as a lawyer is that your first duty is to the court. And what that means is that you can't mislead the court, irrespective of what your client's asking you to do. So you have a duty to your client, but that's always overridden by your duty to the court. And so people always say to you, oh, how can you act for someone you know is guilty? And that's not what it's about. But what it really means is if you came to me and you said, I just shot someone, I did it on purpose, I wanted to do it, but I want to plead not guilty. I couldn't then go into court and say, you're not guilty, you didn't do it, because you've explicitly told me. I can't tell the court what you've told me because that breaches your confidentiality.
Yeah.
But I can't mislead the court when I know that not to be true.
So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense, but but I don't understand how you'd work around that.
Because people don't generally come to you and say, I shot someone.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, let's say, for example, you come and see me, you've got your police brief, and we read through it. I'm not going to say to you, give me your version of events. I don't want to know your version of events. I look at the police brief and I look at the evidence. The less you tell me, the better. Because at the end of the day, all that matters is whether the police can prove their case. And if I don't think there's sufficient evidence and you're not telling me anything otherwise, I can go to court and say, this person's not guilty, the evidence isn't there, the court can't find guilt beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think you've ever worked a case where someone's been wrongly convicted?
I haven't run a lot of matters to a contested hearing. So most people, like I'd say 80%, 85% of people are pleading guilty. And my job is to get them a better outcome, not necessarily to get them off the charges.
Yeah.
In circumstances where people are pleading not guilty, it's more common that the police will concede that their case can't be made out and they would withdraw the charges. But there are obviously situations where people do go to contested hearings, and that's effectively like a trial, but it's determined by a magistrate rather than a judge or jury. They're rare, but they do happen. And I think our firm has had a case recently where I think it was on a question of law, but I think it's hard to say definitively whether or not our client was guilty. He was found guilty, but I don't necessarily agree with that decision. Obviously, at the end of the day, it comes down to the magistrate's decision. But
yeah, so how do you negotiate better terms for somebody? Like, what is involved in that? If they've done the wrong thing and they're saying, I've done the wrong thing, so I imagine it would be like, well, he's going to say he did it wrong. Can you give him a better deal? Is that the complete gist?
No, not really. So the court's required to take into account certain, effectively a certain criteria. So there's sentencing principles, and there's general and specific deterrence. So that's about deterring the community, which is general deterrence, and specific deterrence is about deterring the individual. But then there's also things like rehabilitation of the offender. So the court has like a balancing act of when determining an appropriate disposition. And you sort of, as a defence lawyer, your job is to sort of point them towards a more lenient outcome by giving them information that will assist in, that rehabilitation or whatever it may be. So you might be focusing on, mental illnesses or a trauma background or, just general disadvantage. And the court will then take all of that into account when then determining sentence.
What do you think of somebody that has a trauma background? Because I see this in the news all the time. Like, somebody will do something very bad and they'll get a light sentence, and somebody will do something that doesn't seem nowhere near as bad as the first thing that you read, and they get a really harsh sentence.
Yeah, I think anything you read in the paper about a case should be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I think you can never capture all of the details of a certain case in a newspaper article.
Yes.
So if you're looking at what's been written, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to remember articles are written to sell papers or to get clicks or whatever it may be. So they're going to put the most inflammatory things in an article. So more people read it, more people get angry, more people write in, and in turn that results in, you know, the newspaper or the website making more money. It's not necessarily about capturing the accurate details of the story. I mean, I've had articles about cases of mine in the Shep News that are just so completely inaccurate that you sort of read it and laugh, but then think, well, it's not really fair on the person who's named in there, is it?
Yeah. So. Yeah, they can't name people though, can they?
They can name accused people.
Yeah.
They don't name victims. And in circumstances where naming the accused would result in identifying the victim, they won't name the accused either.
I felt like, personally, Facebook's been so much better since they took the news off it.
Yeah.
Because that's where I always get caught up in reading these crazy stories. And they just make me feel terrible about the world and humans. And now that's gone, I've been noticing it and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I was off Facebook for several years and I only got it again when we moved into the new house to start selling old furniture and stuff. And I had this really bad habit of going on the Shep News Facebook page and reading the articles that they'd put up about any court cases or whatever. And you'd often see comments on there like, oh, the judge should be held accountable for any future offences, or how do people defend people like this? And I'd sort of read it and laugh, but at the same time you can't help but think like there's just so much misinformation out there.
Yeah.
People just don't understand how the justice system works at all.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating.
No, yeah, I that's what I think when I read that article. Is like, there's got to be more to this story. Yeah. Like, these people who are making these decisions are very smart. They're not just guessing at it. Why would the police put forward a case that they knew was going to get thrown out?
The problem, and this will probably make me pretty unpopular, but I think there's a lot of police that, it's not to say that they're not good at their jobs, but quite often they don't know the intricacies of the law.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to enforce the law if you don't necessarily understand it to its full extent. So there's a difference, obviously, between knowing someone did something and being able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, not just on suspicion, but beyond a reasonable doubt is the test for all criminal matters that occurred. You can have a feeling, or you can know really that it happened, but if you can't prove it, you can't prove your case.
How does somebody become a judge?
So there's magistrates and then there's judges, and then there's Supreme Court Justice and High Court Justices. So it goes by each court. So in the Magistrates Court and the Children's Court, which is what we have here every day, you have a magistrate. They're all lawyers. Everyone was once a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you can apply. It's an expression of interest application. You have to have been a lawyer, I think, for at least 5 years, but no one's ever really appointed until they've been a lawyer for quite a bit longer than that. You have to have references and things like that. So it's sort of like a job application, but it comes about in a bit of a weird way because it's effectively advertised by the government. You're working for Court Services Victoria, so it is a government position. So you have to be a lawyer of a certain period of time to become a magistrate. Judges then sit in the county court. They generally come straight from the bar, so barristers. Yeah. Because they have more trial experience and things like that, and that's what a county court judge is sitting through mostly, is trials or the more serious indictable matters. So they're just lawyers at the end of the day. Is
that like a sought after position, or is it kind of like,
I think to some lawyers it would be. Like a lot of, I think it's probably safe to say there would be a lot of people that do aspire to get to that position. I mean, you're in a position of power, you're making decisions about people's liberty every day.
Do you entertain those thoughts?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it would be a bit, I think to be a magistrate could get a little bit sort of monotonous in that, every single day you've got someone coming to you saying, yes, I was drink driving, but it was the night before. And you'd hear a lot of the same thing over and over again. I think it would also be relatively isolating. Like we've got a small cohort of criminal lawyers, and each day we're at court, we're all in one room beside the registry bench together, and we sort of sit and we can talk about our cases, like obviously not specifics, but workshop through things and stuff like that. So you have that sort of teamwork, even though you're all sort of working individually and sometimes you're opposed to one another. But as a magistrate, you're in there by yourself. You've got to make those decisions by yourself, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Do the lawyers get along?
Mostly.
Locally?
Yeah, most do. I mean, as I say, there's different sort of groups. So we've got sort of a criminal lawyers cohort group where there's probably 6 of us and we all get along really well. But then there are other lawyers, like say the lawyers from the legal aid office, for example, who they have their own office at court. So we don't necessarily see them as much. It's not to say we don't get along, but you just obviously have stronger relationships with some than others.
Yeah. I might have missed something here, but you study your law and then you pick what area you want to specialise in?
Not really. So you study, everyone does the same law degree, you do your graduate diploma, you get admitted, and then you take a job wherever you can get.
Okay.
So
but you got the job you wanted?
Yeah.
How awesome.
I was really lucky. There's not a lot of graduate criminal lawyer positions available, so I was obviously really lucky to already be working at a firm and practicing in that area prior to admission. So,
yeah.
But there's a huge oversupply of lawyers. I mean, there's probably I think they have 2 admission ceremonies every month with 100 lawyers in each admission ceremony. That's every month, every year. There's just churn and burn of lawyers out of uni, so there's not enough jobs for everyone.
Okay, that surprises me. I wouldn't have guessed that. How was your time at Slater and King?
Yeah, brilliant. I couldn't have started my career in a better place. It's Luke and Emma are both really brilliant lawyers and both in really different ways, which is probably what I enjoy about it so much. I sort of feel like I can take a lot from each of them, but they're different things that I sort of gain from them both. So it's been a real learning curve, and I think I was definitely thrown in the deep end, but I think that was the best way to do it. It was just prior to my admission, Emma had a baby, so it was sort of as soon as I was admitted, I had to take over her caseload and just start doing everything. But I think that was a really good way to do things because it just prepared me to keep going. And they both have really different management styles, and it's good to see sort of how a firm operates in that way and take from that what you think you'll do. Yeah.
So do you want to tell the people what you're working on at the moment, which is just downstairs?
Yeah. So as of Monday week, so the 15th of March, I'm opening my own law firm, Megan Mckenna Lawyers, out of 57 High Street here in Shep. So I'll be practicing in criminal law and child protection, which is exactly what I've been doing for the past 3.5 years. I'm on all of the legal aid panels, which means legal aid are able to refer me work, but it also means clients can come directly to me and I can apply for legal aid funding on their behalf. And that's obviously subject to eligibility criteria and things like that. Do take on private matters as well. So if someone's, got a drink drive or anything, it could be a drink drive, it could be a murder. But I can take on anything like that. And yeah, it's pretty exciting.
What put the idea to start your own place in your head?
I've always said to myself I won't be an employee for my whole life. And I like my independence and I like being able to sort of march to the beat of my own drum, which might not come as a surprise to many people. And I think I always knew that I would do it. I'd always said before I'm 30. And then during COVID, one of the things that I really hated at the start of COVID was that I was really fearful that I might not have a job because we didn't really know what was going to happen with the courts or whatever. And I hated that someone else had the power to take my job away from me. And I thought, I don't want to ever feel that vulnerable, like be in that position where someone else can take that from me. Yeah. So that sort of spurred me a little bit more. And then I think because we were half working from home and there was a lot of flexibility last year, it made me realise that I effectively was working for myself. I wasn't really checking in or, having to do certain things for the business. It was I was getting my cases done. I was going to court when I needed to. But otherwise I sort of was managing my own time, and I thought, well, I'm basically doing it. I'm just not reaping the benefits of doing it myself. Yeah. So I'll just give it a go.
Are you scared of the extra responsibility?
Nah.
Why do all these legal places have their name in the...
I think it's just a really good way. It's pretty arrogant, probably. But I also think it's a really good way for clients to just be able to find you. I mean, I have a heap of clients that are illiterate. They can't read, they can't write. So by complicating things and, calling yourself winning lawyers or something like that, it's going to make it harder for them. So if it's really easy to just... My lawyer's name's Megan. Oh, there's a firm called Megan Mckenna Lawyers. That might be her. Someone might help them, particularly when people are in custody as well.
Yeah.
They might not have access to phone numbers and things like that, and they can speak to the custody staff and say, look, it's Megan, someone. And I've received phone calls like that before from custody saying, oh, this person said Megan was their lawyer. I typed Megan lawyer into Google and you came up. Is this your client?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
But there's also definitely an arrogant side to it as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, great. Can you tell us a little bit about legal aid?
Yeah. So it's a bit different for all different areas of law. So I only really know about criminal law and child protection. There's an eligibility criteria. So if you want legal aid to fund your case, you have to meet 2 thresholds. The first is you have to be likely to receive a term of imprisonment. That doesn't mean you're going to jail, but it means that you're either charged with an offence serious enough that there's a very real prospect that you'd receive a custodial sentence, or that you've got a massive criminal history and you've gone and stolen a bike from out the front of Coles, but because you've got so much history, there's a chance that you could get locked up for it. And not just a chance, it has to be likely. Mm-hmm. So that's effectively an assessment left to the lawyer. But then you're answerable to legal aid. So I suppose you could sit there and say, yeah, everyone's likely to go to jail, but legal aid can then audit you and say, well, this person probably wasn't going to go to jail, were they? And then the second threshold is that you have to be on a low income. So effectively you have to be on Centrelink or earning less than about $650 a week. Yeah. So most of my clients are on some form of Centrelink, whether that be New Start or disability or parenting payments, things like that. As far as child protection goes, you're eligible for funding if you are on that low income, and if you're seeking an order that places the child in your care and that order isn't what the Department of Health and Human Services are seeking as well. So you have to sort of be opposed.
So with the legal aid, they pay 100% of your fee, or?
Yeah, so they pay the lawyer directly. So say, for example, you came to me and you wanted funding for your case. I would apply to legal aid. I'd submit an application online with all your details in it, and then legal aid would give me a grant of funding. And each time I do an appearance at court, or whatever it may be, if you're in custody and I have a jail conference with you, a phone call with you, I can then submit a claim, and then legal aid pay me. Yeah.
So do you think with this venture moving forward that your friends, family, people who know about you are going to use your service?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people like to think that they'll never need a criminal lawyer.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is most people do at some stage in their life, or if they don't, someone close to them does.
Yeah.
So I would hope that people feel comfortable coming to me if I know them, but I also understand that it's perhaps something that you don't want to go to someone you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I suppose it's independent.
What are the most common things specifically that you do right now?
As far as cases go?
Yeah. Do you do drunk driving?
Do a bit of drink driving. So legal aid doesn't fund any driving matters.
Yeah.
So anything like that has to be privately funded. There is a little bit of that. There's probably mostly family violence related offending, drug related offending. Shop thefts are pretty common, burglaries, fights at nightclubs and pubs and stuff like that. It's one sort of leads into the other. It's either drug related offending or family violence, and they sort of tie in.
Yeah, of course. How come it takes so long for somebody to get to the court? Like, I know people who did an offence 2 years ago and they're still waiting.
Yeah. At the moment, it's COVID. Obviously, there's a massive, massive backlog because the court's basically adjourned everything for 6 months. But even prior to that, I mean, the police have effectively as long as they want to charge someone if it's an indictable offence. If it's a summary offence, they only have 12 months from the date of the offence to filing the charges with the court. So if they wait any longer than that, once the person gets to court, the charges have to get thrown out.
Yeah.
Which is really nice when that happens. But yeah, it's basically up to the police. Sometimes I think they can sit on their hands for a bit longer if they want, or they might be overwhelmed with work and they might something might stay in their top drawer for a while and then they remember it and file the charges 12 months after. Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, because I just heard this from the horse's mouth, but I think what happened with this person, he had a couple court dates booked in, but the opposing lawyer didn't show up, or does that sound like something that would happen? Or
not really, because if it's a police charge, the opposition is the police and they're at court every day.
Yeah.
So there's police prosecutors that sit in court and they would have all the matters. If it was, say, for example, maybe an intervention order or something like that, then there might be a lawyer on the other side that, might be Melbourne-based or something and just sends emails asking for adjournments or something like that, yeah.
Okay. What do you think of the new law courts?
They're a lot better than the old court. The old court was really average. It was just really dark and dingy. There's so much space and so much light in the new building. I think, it's not perfect, and I think they'll learn from a lot of different things. There's not enough rooms for lawyers to meet with clients. As I said, all the criminal lawyers share one room. It's not because we really love each other. It's because there's just not enough rooms for everyone, which is crazy when you look at the size of the building. But so it's got its flaws, but it's such a big improvement on what we had.
What about the appearance of it? I
don't love it, but I don't hate it. I think I prefer the new museum. I think I prefer the appearance of that.
Yeah.
It's something about the rust look, though. I'm just not into it.
You would like the big windows, though.
Yeah, I do. I love the natural light.
Yeah.
But it's a bit too colourful for me.
So you've done so much recently. What are your goals moving forward?
I think probably grow the business initially, but not necessarily grow in size, just in confidence maybe. I don't necessarily envisage having staff or more lawyers or anything like that. I don't think you necessarily need to go bigger to be any better. But I think just to get to a stage where I'm comfortable and confident and I've got a consistent workflow and things like that, probably be short term work-wise anyway.
Do you think you could grow into a big firm?
I think I would struggle with that, me personally.
But people bring on partners and stuff like that. You're obviously strong in some areas.
Yeah, I'm too much of a control freak to share that. Nah.
Yeah.
I just... and I think staff can be your biggest asset. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They can be. But they're always going to be your biggest expense, irrespective of whether they're your biggest asset.
Yeah.
So if they're not your biggest asset, they're still your biggest expense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to create issues.
Do you think there's going to be more spots like yours popping up?
I think so, yeah. I reckon there's a lot of young practitioners that will probably aspire to do similar things to what I'm doing at the moment. Having said that, there are a lot of practitioners around here that sort of come to Shep for a couple of years to then go to the city or go to the bar or whatever that may be. So, I think there'll be a few.
Yeah. Do you think the amount of work you put into building this career is equivalent to the eventual reward you're going to get?
I think so. Yeah.
Do you feel like you've worked really hard to get where you are?
Yeah. I feel like I haven't stopped in 6 years.
What have you given up?
Probably my mental health. Look, when I was at uni, when I was studying and working, I had absolutely no social life whatsoever. And as Kai says, I was awful. I think the past few years, I'm just moody. But I don't think I've necessarily given anything up. I've probably
going through those periods. Surely you've lost some friends and stuff.
Yeah, I would have.
It's put pressure on the relationship, and
yeah,
you've conquered all that. But
yeah,
no, great. I'll end on this one, Megan. Who locally inspires you?
I think I was thinking about this. It's hard to pinpoint a single person, but I think what inspires me, particularly about the local community, is that there are so many young people that go out and just start their own businesses and do their own thing. Like I've got so many friends that, will start their own plumbing business or construction or whatever that may be. And I think that in and of itself is quite inspiring, because it's not something that you see or hear about as often happening in the city. People sort of work for a company, they build their way up, they might get into a partnership or whatever. But to see people sort of go out and do their own thing, I think is what inspires me.
That's awesome. You're joining that journey as well.
Yeah, it's scary.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.